Street Smart Podcast, Day 3 of the OTC 2023. I'm here with Dan Hoffarth, CEO, founder of Citadel Drilling. And so good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me, Justin.
Absolutely. Yeah, we got here super early. The floor's not quite open just yet. We did that so that hopefully this time we keep people from walking through. But we'll see. It remains to be seen. It's funny to me they come right through here like there's not obviously something going on.
Yeah, it's been a busy show. Like Monday was pretty slow. Yesterday was busy. I think they were expecting over 100,000 yesterday.
Yeah, that's a lot of people. But and it was busy, but it didn't feel like it was just shoulder to shoulder, couldn't move around. So that was good.
Yeah, no, it was like in past years I think it was a few more exhibitors, or quite a few more exhibitors, and much more densely packed. But yeah, it wasn't uncomfortable.
Yeah. So this is my first time here, so I don't have a frame of reference. But I think you and I were talking about it, and you were like, "No, it used to be like all of this stuff," and I was like, "Oh." Yeah, that would be considerably bigger, even though this is huge.
Yeah, it was breathtaking. A few years back, even pre-COVID, going back pre-COVID, and 2016, 17, 18, this whole building was just absolutely shoulder to shoulder with booths. There was a 5-year wait to get a booth anywhere near the front doors as you came in. It was a real pecking order to get a spot. And then outside was just as big as inside. So there was a day of walking around inside just to even walk past all the booths, and a day outside.
Wow.
So it was a considerable show.
Yeah, it still is. I mean, even though it does sound like it's scaled down quite a bit, it's still very it's just still a considerable show for sure. So you and I got connected by Nick Brazel. Shout out Nick. And I work with Nick at Wildcat. And you work with Nick when we do the inspection work on your pipe, and he was like, "Hey, you need to get with Dan. It would be a good, great interview, great story." So he's really hyped you up. So don't mess this up.
Well, I can't be held accountable for what Nick says. So
no one should be held accountable for anything Nick says or does.
That's right.
You remember what I asked you? I was like, how do you know Nick? And then I stopped and I said, the better question is, why do you know Nick? But Nick's been actually absolutely fantastic for that pipe inspection business. He's grown it quite a bit, and I can't say enough good things about him. So I'm glad that he got us connected. And then you got me connected with the guys at Opla, because your companies are tied together, and it's been really, really great to meet everyone. So thank you for taking time to sit down with me, and it took a bit for us to get the logistics worked out, but here we are.
No, it's great, and thanks for making the time for them all too, because great exposure for them and their team and their company and their stories, and I think there's some good stories there.
Absolutely, it's great company, and the awards they've won here and all of that just speak to that. I mean, and those awards are for tangible things, the technology and the software and all of that, but none of that happens without the people, and that really came through in the interviews that we had. So they're a great team. I know you're proud of them, and rightfully so.
Absolutely.
So enough about them, though, because we're going to talk about you, and specifically we want to talk about kind of your journey into entrepreneurship, because you look back through your history and you weren't always founder of a drilling company. You worked in the industry for a long time, and I'm always interested kind of the path that someone takes to getting there. I tell people all the time, I was born and raised in Midland, Texas, and so you're around oil and gas, and specifically oil and gas services a lot. My dad owned service companies, and I saw firsthand that entrepreneur spirit, and I have some of that in me, but I'm terrified to do it. And I'm amazed at people that, not that they're not terrified to do it, but they kind of stare that down and do it anyway. And I'm curious about those stories and how that happens. But before we get to all of that, where were you born? Where were you raised? All of those types of things, so we can get started at the beginning.
Yeah, so I'm from Canada, and I was born in a province of Saskatchewan on a dirt farm. We were 20 miles from the nearest town. Very, very humble upbringings, hardworking parents, great parents. Couldn't have asked for a better upbringing, but homemade clothes till I was in high school as well. And one of those scenarios where you know, I had two brothers and a sister, and my oldest brother was interested in farming, and you know, farm's not big enough for more than one of us. So everybody else kind of had to find a different path, and
And he was the older brother,
yeah, and then
so he wins.
yeah, well, I don't know if you call it winning when you take a look at, you know, the path afterwards.
That's fair.
He may have had the harder path for sure than what the rest of us did.
Oh man, farming. There's no easy day farming.
No, you know, and you know, talk about risk, and you know, get into that later in my career. But you know, the risk of farming, I have so much respect for that industry and for the people and families that participate in that. You know, you put seed in the ground in the spring, and you know, you're praying for rain. You know, you are on your knees praying the whole year.
There's so much that you cannot control that 100% controls you.
Absolutely.
In farming, that is a terrifying business model.
And they take on all the risk, and the reward gets shared by so many.
Oh yeah.
You know, they take on the risk of seeding and drought and bugs and the things that'll destroy your crop, and hail and, you know, frost, and you know,
and the shit just didn't grow. You know,
you name it, right?
Yeah.
And then if they get lucky enough to get a crop in the bin, now they have to sell it. And again, that's where the sharing really, the oversharing starts. You know, you know, prices may go up or may go down, but that may not necessarily reflect the dollar for dollar value that goes into that person's pocket. So, you know, those families are extremely hardworking, difficult times. So yeah. Anyways, I ended up going to college for a few years, and actually needed some money to finish my degree. And my second oldest brother was working on the drilling rigs, and he said, "Well, come out for the summer, and we'll get you going."
Just one summer. That's all you're gonna do.
It was going to be one summer. Yeah, just come out for one summer.
Yeah.
And so I go out, and he broke me in on drilling rigs, little drilling rigs, telescopic doubles with spinning chains and cat heads, and all the things that
Yeah.
that people talk about in having nightmares and stuff on today. But we didn't know any different.
We
Right?
romanticize about that.
Yeah, you get guys that, you know, like to talk about spin and chain, but I don't know too many that have done so onto the cat head side, not the hydraulic side.
Sure.
So, you know, those cat heads, that spin and chain that thing would be going 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, you don't
And-
need part of that for sure. And a lot of those people that say, you know, that reflect on spinning change, if you ask them to point over there, they could only about halfway do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was definitely, you know, you needed to have your head on your shoulders and
For sure.
and eyes open all times.
Well, what did you want to be when you were a kid? When you look back when you were a little boy and you're on the farm and you're like, man, I could do this, but I don't want to necessarily do this. What were you like? I want to be this when I grow up.
I don't know. I think I had all those same boyhood dreams of, you know, being an astronaut or being a policeman or, you know, playing in the NHL or, you know, playing hockey or, you know, all
We don't
of
have the
those
NHL
things.
one here. It's NFL.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and I tell that same story actually in the doghouses today when I go out to the rig. I always look at everybody and I'm like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
None of us put our hand up in grade 1 and said, I want to be a roughneck when I grow up. So we all got here through a different path, and you all came here for one reason and one reason only, and that was to get back on your feet or to get on your feet financially. And the rest, you know, the rest is the story that you have to tell. And now you're looking at this, or you started looking at this as a job. Now we want to be able to, you know, create that pathway from job to career.
Right.
And when you start looking at this as a career path, your success starts changing.
So when you went out there for that summer, that was very much you looked at this is a job.
Absolutely. Well, first 2-3 years I looked at it as this is a job, and I was always going to go back somewhere else. And, you know, eventually I got looking at it. I'm like, well, I'm making more money here than I would with my degree at this point, no
Sure.
matter what my degree was.
What were you trying to get a degree in?
At that point, I was going in for teaching.
Okay.
Yeah. And, you know, started enjoying it, and I realized again, you know, a little bit of self-reflection in that moment where you're taking a look, and it's like, you know what, I like being outside. I do. I enjoy.
Yeah.
I enjoy being outside. I tell my wife, I'm like, I could live outside. If that was an option, I would enjoy a lot more of that. And
I don't know, man. It gets pretty cold in Canada. I could live outside here until the summertime, and then I'd be like, well, this is awful.
yeah,
So it's, I guess, flip side of the coin. But
yeah. No,
but
I love being outside. So, that's always been, one of those pieces where it's like, well, this is a job that I can, be outside. I look at other jobs, and even nowadays today, I look at, okay, what job exists that's 9 to 5 and you sleep in your own bed every night?
oh man, well, they do exist. They I will tell you that they don't exist that will provide the resources financially in a lot of cases that I would want.
Yeah.
So you're right. When you look at it from that perspective, and the oil and gas industry never stops. I mean, it
No,
just
and we go
never.
where the oil goes. Right?
Correct.
That's we go where the rig goes. We go where the job goes. Truckers go where the job goes.
That's right.
Anything that's entrepreneurial goes where the job is. And I just think like that's part of that entrepreneurial piece where you have to be flexible. You have to be able to be mobile, and you have to be able to take the turns that are needed as the business requires, or as what's called upon you.
And I think that's right. And with that in mind, I think it's fair to say that anyone that makes oil and gas industry a career has got to have some level of that type of a spirit about them, or they will not be successful.
For sure, and I think that's all success stories, or all stories in general. That when you see somebody that has been in any industry for over 25, 30 years, the path was never straight.
No, no.
And people look at that and they're like, oh, look at that, 30-year overnight success story.
Yeah.
It must be nice.
Yeah.
But
Man, the guy's lucky.
exactly right. And anyways, I get to the drilling job and enjoyed that, and then I remember my boss called me and he goes, we're gonna set you up be a tool push, be a rig manager. I'm like, man, can I just relief push first? Like I don't know what I'm doing in that.
Yeah.
He's like, no, you're gonna go take that rig. I'm like, well, what if I say no? He goes, well, then you're not gonna work on this rig either.
Yeah. Well, then you're out.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it was a take it.
You've been voluntold to do this.
It was a take it or take it type of option. And
you have two choices. You can take this, or you can also take this.
Yeah. And
so you took it.
Yeah, I took it, and I'll tell you, it was had a lot of good mentors in my life. My brother being my first one of my rig managers. We started. So about, I guess, late 90s, our company, it was Command Drilling at the time, started on a rig build program. And they brought in guys from the outside that had worked on bigger rigs. And, our company made the decision to let's get into these diesel electric rigs back then, the SCR rigs.
So they're going to add to the fleet, and then we're going to add bigger rigs to the fleet.
Yeah. So they were a capacity rig that, not many, if anybody in the company had worked on, let alone understood that well. So they brought in some guys, and, now you got this kind of split culture of people.
Right. Maybe a little bit of resentment piece in there too.
Yeah.
You got outside
sure.
people, so that doesn't ever. Rarely do they show up and everybody's like, "Come on in, man."
Yeah, absolutely. It's that scarcity mentality, right? So every piece of pie somebody else gets is one less for you, and so you're really we were kind of apprehensive. Everybody was, and anyways, one of those rig managers took a few of us under his wing and really showed us everything there was on this new style of rig that was new to us at that point. And we went on a rig build program and started working with that gentleman a lot and spending a lot of time with him.
What do you think made him want to take, specifically, obviously you were one of them he took under his wing. What do you think about you made him realize this is worth investing my time on?
Our work ethic. We came from the little rigs, and that was just straight out, flat out stuff all the time. You were doing wells in 5-6 days back then. And this was in, these rigs were doing wells in 60 days, 70 days, 90 days back then, even more 100-day wells. So they had lots of time. And when you get into some of the repetitive jobs that occur at that pace, nippling up BOPs,
Yeah.
that was all done with a hammer wrench and a hammer and nuts and bolts. There was nobody coming out to help you. And that was the story for all of us. Nobody was coming out to help you.
Right.
You had to figure it out. So, we became mechanics, and we became guys that could, articulate to welders how we needed to have this thing done, or how to fix, the equipment.
You had to.
Well, it didn't occur to us that there was any other way.
Right. That's
that,
right.
That was the job.
Yeah. So, and that's an interesting point to make. It wasn't that you were like, oh, crap, I got to learn this too. It was like, no, this is just part of what I'm doing.
Yeah, you were an electrician. You
Right.
were, you fixed sprockets and chains, and
Yeah, you owned it from A to Z.
Yeah, that was that. And again, that's part of the great part of this job, right? Was we became mechanics, we became electricians. We became very self-sufficient. I say this in the doghouse today too. If you have the ability to be a roughneck, you can be anything. You really can, because when you go home, it doesn't occur to you not to fix anything that's broken. If your dryer breaks down, you hit YouTube and you think you got that thing fixed for like $23.
That's right.
You are not paying $500 for some guy to come to your house and fix your dryer. You are tearing that thing apart, and it doesn't occur to you to do it any other way.
Right. And that mentality, to your point, you pay someone $400 to fix a $20 fix is ridiculous. We had a lightning strike that just destroyed my dishwasher motherboard. And we were like, man, we got to get rid of that. And my wife, she's much more mechanically inclined than me, which is horrible to admit. I'm doing it on air, and she listens to these because I force her to, and so she'll hear that. And in my mind, I started to go the other direction, like she was telling me, even whatever. I also realized she's going to hear this, and I get called on it. But she was like, I bet I can find that motherboard. I was like, yeah. So she gets on Amazon, orders it, fixes it, and we had a home warranty, so they replaced the dishwasher, and then she sold the one that she fixed. I was like, this is brilliant. Well done.
Absolutely. And those are the skill sets that you pick up along the way, right? And I think that help make you, who you end up ultimately being, and those are great pieces. So that individual picked us up, I think, basically at the beginning for our work ethic, and then later on, obviously, just became, professional colleagues, and really started, working together to get things done at a better pace, at a better rate, and he ended up getting sick and passing of cancer.
Oh, man.
And then I became next in this rig building piece, this, kind of who's building that next rig in this company, as far as just overseeing the build from an operational perspective. There was lots of people involved in the process, obviously, as there always is. And then I just started a process of coming in and overseeing, parts of the rig build, getting it together, the assembly, and then taking it out into the field, working the bugs out of it, and then setting up a rig manager, going back in, doing it again.
So this time you weren't actually on the rigs full time. You were mainly facilitating the build of the rig, troubleshooting it once it's built, and then assigning a manager to it, and then rinse and repeat.
I'd like to say it was a really great kind of, I got to go home quite a bit, but that wasn't the case whatsoever. Yeah. I either lived at the rig or I lived in the yard.
Right.
And I still ended up sleeping in my own bed, maybe one night out of every 5. But it was again, it was such an enjoyable time in my life where I got to learn so much.
Sure.
You have the same day over and over again, and you don't really learn much. If all you're doing is turning a bit to the right and circulating mud, well, that's just the same day over and over again.
You're gonna get really good at that.
Yeah, you bet. So eventually, that company got bought by Nabors, and then I got moved from Calgary up to Edmonton to the Nisky facility, and was a drilling soup there, and they had kind of smash code 3-4 different companies together at the time, and ended up drilling soup for them, had like 26 rigs that
wow.
I was running on my side. And that was again kind of one of those 24-hour commitment pieces where the phone rings. Nobody gives you a call at 3 o'clock in the morning to say, hey, everything's great.
No,
So.
no. So I've been in safety my entire career, safety and quality, and I've made the same comment. No one ever gets hurt on a Wednesday at 10 o'clock in the morning.
No.
And it's the same deal. It never stops. It just
Yeah.
it's as long as there are operations, there are exposures, and you've got to worry about that. Whether it's an operational exposure, which is what you'd be worried about, and the safety stuff, or you're worried about safety exposure or whatever, it's never not present in this industry. So, so I also worked for Nabors, but I worked for Nabors on the well servicing side, and I went to work out in West Texas, what used to be a pool company, and when you talk about them buying up companies and smashing them together, and that culture piece was so interesting to watch. When I got there, I was never a pool employee. I was only a Nabors employee.
Yeah.
But you had a lot of legacy guys that had been there for a long time, and they would only wear pool clothing, hats, whatever. And I still remember the day that Nabors came down at a corporate level and said, guys, listen, we get it. You're very proud of that heritage. Obviously, you should be. That's one of the reasons we purchased the company. But put those museum pieces away, and you got to get on board it. Man, you'd have thought they walked up and slapped someone's mother at Thanksgiving dinner. Like, it was intense the way that culture change happened.
So we had a very similar experience in on the Canadian side. They put 4 drilling contractors together and a few other companies, and in hindsight, now that you're a little more one's a little more well read and a little more experienced, and this word culture has entered the workplace, and back then that wasn't a thing. Nobody ever.
Certainly wasn't a thing in oil and gas.
No, you culture was something you studied in social studies in grade school.
Right.
What is it, culture? And that would have been about it. But I look back at that, and same thing. I almost wish they would have came, and they did the same thing. They said, hey, look, you know what? All these companies have a lot of really good parts. Let's take the best from everything, and we're gonna kind of get that back together and put a blue book around that. And all that did was for 10 years, people stayed in these little hives, right?
Sure.
And silos and coveralls, and letterhead popped up from the old companies coming in on reports and stuff forever, right? And
Right.
in hindsight, I wish they would have just come in and laid it out. Here's the big blue book, learn it, love it, or leave, and have that philosophy to it, so that at least people all got on the same page sooner.
Yeah, and there was a definite line in the sand, right? Like, okay, hey, this is all great.
Yeah.
Moving forward, it's this.
Yeah.
And that's how they did it, man. And there were a couple people that spooled up, man. They went on somewhere else. But most everybody was like, oh, this is bullshit. And then they just got with it and went to work.
And ultimately, I think that's the choice most reasonable people would make.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, at some point, you're griping about a logo that you're still going to do the same thing you were doing yesterday.
Yeah.
And so at this point, you're now drilling superintendent for Nabors, over 20. Did you say 26 rigs?
Yeah. So that was
a decent. That's a decent job.
It was a full time go.
Yeah, for sure.
And it wasn't that I had it as worse than anyone else. The other guys were just as busy as anyone was,
Sure.
right? But you kind of ran those things from, again, dusk to dawn, and if somebody needed a set of elevators or something in the middle of the night, you'd run to the shop and make sure they got loaded up and you got the right equipment out. That was just,
or take it to them if no one else could.
Yeah, and again, it didn't occur to you that it should be done any other way.
Sure.
This wasn't some, I'm throwing my arms up in the air.
Right.
And it's like, Bob didn't show up again. No, there was no Bob.
Right.
Like that was just how the business was. And then, I knew some other guys that were getting the company started, and they asked if I would come on board, and it was in the underbalance business game. And they're like, look, you got credibility with your operational experience. Would you consider coming in and looking more at a business development and sales role in this? So I stepped into that, left Nabors, and
how long were you with Nabors?
Another 3 years of that. So this would have been in I guess '03 type thing.
So total with the legacy company and Neighbors, that was
Well, that would have been the
it's
first.
like would have been like 14 years, something like that.
Yeah, well, yeah, that would have been 14 years, 12,
Yeah.
14 years.
So you got 14 years working essentially with the same in the same area,
Yeah.
and you just after 14 years go, awesome, let's do something different.
Yeah, and that was the first little bite on the entrepreneurial side, and then that turned into okay, we want to grow this business, we want to grow it beyond Canada. You know, there was some other guys that looked stateside and Mexico side, and then I did the rest.
Yeah.
So my job was to make entries into the Middle East and Asia and Southeast Asia, and again then kind of did the plane ride piece for 3 years there.
All first class.
Yeah. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of different countries, right? And again, we're talking about a time. This is now during the Persian Gulf War, right?
Sure. A little tense over there.
Yeah, there's countries you're coming into that are a little more difficult, and like I said, you fly into a lot of airports where machine guns were just a part of the day.
Sure.
Little unnerving for sure, but we get
I
through
saw
it.
that in Pittsburgh last 2 weeks ago. Guys were walking around with full tack gear.
Wow.
And I was like, what's going on in here today? It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But in those countries like that, that's not abnormal. Those people see it all the time. You really realize how truly safe we are in Canada is very similar to the U.S. that we don't walk around, and there's people walking around with machine guns at all times.
Yeah, for most of us, I don't think it occurs to us that, and again, another doghouse piece that I always kind of relate to. Most of us don't believe that we're going to go home in a different condition in which we showed up in the morning. Like right now here today, my expectation, I'm going to walk around here. I'm going to go to the ball game later on today, and then I'm going to go back to the hotel, and it's going to be a good full day. It doesn't occur to me that something really terrible could happen in that
completely
process,
life
right?
altering. Yeah.
And on the rig side, this is the statement that I always say to the crews and to all our people. It's like, you should have that same view. Do not look. And again, as a QHSE professional, you probably connect to this. Our business does not deserve to have a view that there's an acceptable amount of risk or injury associated with it just because of what it is or what it was.
Agreed.
That has to stop. The days of the black and white, close your eyes and think of a roughneck. The days of the black and white picture with a crooked hard hat and a cigarette hanging out of his mouth and, tattered jeans are over. These are professional people at this point. Again, it's even about how we talk about them. We call our crews the rig technicians. They're working on $40 million pieces of machinery
that are very high tech.
Yeah, we are hiring from the neck up these days.
Correct.
And have those same expectations. So, the doghouse speech is, look, you need to make sure you are demanding the right to go home in the same condition you showed up. Take that stop, take that pause, take that time to understand. It's no different than a banker. He's not going to try to get money out of the safe so fast he's going to slam his hand in the door.
Right. Yeah, I've always found it interesting when you have every once in a while, and not at Wildcat. I can honestly say Wildcat's management team is the key to our success when it comes to safety and everything. But I've worked in places before where if an employee were to get hurt, a manager would get angry at that employee. And my question to them was always, do you think that guy woke up this morning and thought, man, I can't wait to break my leg today? This is going to be amazing.
Absolutely.
And it just seemed so asinine to me and misplaced, honestly.
It's with any incident.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I fundamentally don't believe, somebody's going to show up and hop in the loader and go, watch me wreck stuff now. Like, that's not their intention, right?
That's correct.
They want to do a good job, and they want to be seen and acknowledged as doing a good job. So if anything, it's either, again, real or perceived pressure that is put on them to perform at a level that's maybe beyond their capacity at the time, and that causes the incident.
Yes. So, yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. So now you are. I'm curious what made you decide to leave, because obviously you had a fantastic career at Nabors and something that
Yeah.
would probably have just carried on to the C-suite eventually. I mean, that's the path you're on. What makes you step out of that path? What was it about that opportunity that you said, man, I have to do this?
That's a tough one to pin on that one. That first step, I think, was just less conscious than I'd like to say it was. Like it was just more of an unconscious move that looked like an opportunity that said, hey, well, why not? I can always come back to something like this. So it was a dip your feet in the water. And 3 years into that, I just started seeing the world from a different perspective, or the business from a different perspective than those that I was working with there. And I stepped away from that company and then I really jumped in and started a startup in the same business with a different philosophy. And
If you don't mind getting into it a bit, what was it that you were seeing that you said, this is not for me, and if I had it to do my way, I would do it this way, and ultimately say, I'm going to do it that way?
I guess it was focus and discipline to that. I think we all have a degree of OCD that says we need to wake up in the morning a certain way. We need to be able to see ourselves in the mirror a certain way. We need to be able to, go to work with that sense of I'm going to try to accomplish X today. And, like again, to me, 80% of your day should be planned the day before. Otherwise, you don't have the bandwidth to deal with the 20% that's going to be changing. You don't have the ability. We live in a very dynamic world. If you don't plan 80% of your day, you can't. You don't have the capacity to deal with a flat tire on your car to the degree that you should. Now now it's temper tantrum in the car. Why does this always happen to me? I'm late for this. I'm late for that. So if we don't build out that big part of our day the day before, and to me, that's one of the things that was missing there, was the strategy. What is our short-term, mid-term, long-term views of things? Where are we setting these goals? It was just I think a very loose philosophy on how we're going to grow the company, and to me that didn't translate into, I guess, what I felt I needed.
Well, I mean, in a business development role, if you don't know that, how can you even know where to point the spear?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you say, okay, at this point, you're going to leave that company and you're going to start your true first startup.
Yeah.
What was the name of it?
Valesco Energy Ventures. So Valesco was meant to grow strong, and I didn't have money at all. Like it was, and I didn't realize how dumb.
Borrow it from your farmer brother.
How dumb I was. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there was no bank of the farm of Saskatchewan that was going to bail me out either. So I remember
Saskatchewan's such a fun word to say. I've always thought that. I'm so happy you're from there.
It's like West Texas. It's flat. You can watch your dog run away for 3 days.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
But
do you have amazing sunsets?
Not like West Texas.
I always laugh because I have a lot of family out there still, and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, Houston's beautiful, but our sunsets." I'm like, "We have the same sunset. I just can't see it because of trees."
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, yeah, you get a good view of the sunset, that's for sure.
Absolutely, but they really do have pretty ones out there for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, you had no money, and you said, and you're married probably this time.
Not at this time.
Okay.
No. And,
oh well, hey.
And I partner that was starting the business with me. We went down to Houston, and we're talking to financial guys, and built out this business plan, pitched it pitched it to the first gentleman. He's like, yeah. Well, first group actually. Sorry, it was the first group of people. So it was a private equity firm out of Boston that we were talking to, and out of the gate they're like, yeah, well, we're in.
Oh wow.
And I'm like,
So that was easy.
and then I'm like, but we got other meetings here too. Like I'm not saying we're absolutely gonna do this with you, but as a professional courtesy, could we have a chat with these guys as well? And ended up having a couple more conversations. Everybody joined up and shared the startup experience with us on that side. So it was a really great moment. And again, maybe in hindsight, I wish it would have been a little harder because it felt easy, at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, right out of the gate, we're oversubscribed. Fantastic.
Yeah, one day,
Yeah.
So it was a one-day sellout, and okay, well, I guess we'll go back and get started.
Right. That's right.
So yeah, we started.
Well, congrats
that
on that, man. That's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah, that was.
Did you realize how big of an accomplishment that was right out of the gate, or were you just like, oh?
I didn't have a comparative, right?
Sure.
So I don't, felt great, but again, I don't know if I could compare it to say, hey, that's really big or just big. It was just big for me, right? So
Right.
that was awesome. And we started building equipment, and then the next funny part is our first customer. First customer ever, we qualified and went to work for Shell as a startup.
That's even more impressive. Like, I mean, in hindsight, you have to look at that and say, wow, that's amazing.
It was, and it was such an experience where, again, that plan for the day before philosophy really paid off, right? And so we were building out, and so we were big into focused more on the nitrogen packages to be a little bit different and disruptive, so we could split them out. And what we found was in Oklahoma we could pump wells dry, right? So rather than some of the big companies were coming in with tankers of cryo nitrogen and then heating it up and pumping for 3, 4 days, 5 days to pump the fluid off these gas wells, we would come in with just a straight nitrogen membrane kit and back up to the wellhead, and one guy working days, one guy working nights. We pump it off in 2-3 days at half the cost that it would take. So we we're pretty happy. We're rocking and rolling. Built our big package out. Ended up winning a major contract in Portugal. We were going to be doing one of the first on-land big projects in Portugal for drilling. So the concept there was during the continental drift theory, Portugal and eastern Canada, where Hibernias were lined up and drifted out, and that the reserves were going to be something great there. And there's stories and stories about Portugal that that were awesome. Like it was just here's a place that hasn't had any land drilling. Like
Right.
I think the oil company that went in there when they were negotiating the rights for the lease, they had something like 1,700 landowners on the space that the rig would be on, because
Oh my gosh.
it's such old land, and they divided it in
Here's your
rows.
piece.
No, just in
Yeah.
a straight grapevine row, right? It was
Oh, wow.
like the vineyards, right? So
Yeah.
it was this straight row that a family's owned for 500 years, and now there's 60 of them that own this row, and they make 200 bottles of wine off of it a year, and that's their family wine.
Wow.
So that was lots of stories like that stuff. It was really cool. But then 2009 hits.
Yeah, that was a great time.
Yeah.
I was still with Nabors in 2008 when all that started kind of falling apart.
Yeah, so we scrambled up a little bit and were able to sell that company to Weatherford because they had we were very nitrogen heavy, and they needed more of it for a contract that they had won in Russia. So we got out with our skin, which was the best possible outcome, I guess, right?
At that time, it was for sure. Did you realize at that time that was like When you were going into that process, were you thinking, man, we need to recoup and get out? Even is fine.
No, I was emotionally involved.
Sure.
So it was like, nah, this too will pass, right? And we're gonna just, man, I wish, let's not do it, and didn't want to do it, and we ended up.
How did you? Because that would be a common thing, right? You built this thing up. You've seen it, go from, day one, full sell out or sell out. You're subscribed, ready to go, start work, hit first contract is a grand slam, and now you're seeing, and it's no fault of your own. It's industry conditions. And how were you able to get past the emotional tie and say, man, this is the best thing for the company?
I don't know if you do. Like, you're just bitter, right? Like, you just it's the kick in the shin.
Sure.
Like, man, it's the what if? Like,
Right.
If we had another couple of good years on that, So, and I guess I wasn't riding the highs and lows. I still hadn't made much personal money at all at that point, right? So I was paying my bills and, just going through life. I wasn't struggling. I wasn't sleeping in my car or anything like that. So, again, I was still comfortable, but, it was a tough time, more mentally than it was physically. And then, again, now what? So we sell that company off, and, I'm kind of wondering at this point now, what's next? What do we do? And a buddy of mine.
So you didn't stay on.
No. A few months off, and a friend, old colleague of mine called, and they were looking for a guy to sell some of their rigs. Hey guys, we got 9 rigs. We're only working 3. We'd like to get this thing built back up and get things. Would you come over? And this was back in Calgary now, and I'm like, yeah, I got nothing going on right now. Come and do that. So, work sales for them, for drilling rigs. We got all those rigs up and running, and at this point, my wife and I have our son, and our daughters are a little older. They're 12 and 6, 12 and 5, and have our son, and life's a little more real at this point, obviously, and working this job. And again, I was getting home every night, like it was good, but there was nothing more to do. We had everything running, and that's when the call came back from Nabors again, saying, hey, we're, one of our legacy positions is retiring, who was a mentor of mine. Rob Wagemakers was stepping down as VP for their sales and marketing in Canada. And they said, look, the company, the rigs, the iron, would you want to come in and take a look at this? And I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a pretty good deal. So went through that process and succeeded Rob in that role. And
so you go back to Nabors.
Yeah, back at Nabors now. And I'm thinking, hey, this is my retirement gig.
Where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah, now I can see that
sure,
that C-suite move and continue just to work with this company. A lot of respect for the company, a lot of respect for the people there. It was, technically one of my first homes, right? So felt really comfortable, easy building to be in.
Their booth is just right there.
Yeah.
I'm looking at everything you say Nabors. I just look at it. It's right there.
And we still do a lot of work with them.
Yeah.
Like we'll get into that, but yeah, we do a ton of work with the NDS product line on the digital products that they're running for downhole applications with the drilling rigs. Did that, and seems like my life worked in rounds of 3-year increments back then. That Step Away was 3 years, and Valeska was 3 years. Now I'm 3 years into Nabors, and
Nabors Part 2.
Yeah, exactly. And get a couple phone calls from these guys, and they just want to have a coffee and talk about the market, private equity firm, and yeah, sure. And, it wasn't something that was, new or unheard of. Just again, people wanted to understand the market from our perspective a little bit, so we have that conversation, And you know, they're like, so what are you thinking about the drilling rig space and the size of the rigs and where are we at? And you know, again, just an overview of where we had everything, right? We had
Right.
a couple singles, we had telescopic doubles, we had old SCR triples, we had AC triples, and at this point, we had been building the big walking rigs where we actually put them on a walking platform for some of the oil sands work. It was just amazing technology.
I got to see some of those walking rigs at in Long Beach at Thumbs Island.
Yeah,
It's a little different than what you're describing because it's on a rail system there.
yeah.
So cool. I'm like, you're literally just going to drive that rig around this island? We're like, yeah. We
Yeah.
keep punching holes.
Yeah, we were doing like 60 well pairs down
It's
a line.
so cool, man.
Like it was just it was an assembly line factory of drilling. It was, and that was again another big learning experience where, you know, wow, this is a different way to drill wells. We're not just, you know, popping a hole in the ground and taking off and going to the next hole in the ground.
Right.
This is transforming the industry into a whole bunch of different things here now. Like I you know, that's really cool.
Like literally creating whole industries to help support that type of activity. It's so amazing how that works.
Yeah, and then you know, and then we got into some potash stuff. I was like, what? Wow.
Okay,
So,
hey, why not?
so yeah, they wanted to drill to create a new shaft. So they drive these shafts down into the ground. You're, I don't know, 150 feet down into the ground, and then these miners go miles underground mining
Yeah.
potash. Right? It's underground cities, and you know, so anyways, they were driving so far now because they had mined. It was time to sink a new shaft so that logistically they could just get closer to the potash
Right.
as they started, rather than, you know, driving 40 minutes underground to work on top of showing up.
I can't even imagine that.
No, me neither.
That's terrifying to me. So nope.
So we took a rig with a walking system and we would drill like 30 holes around in a circle, and then they would circulate freezing brine water to freeze the ground, and then they would excavate it so that they would create like a frozen crib around the outside and excavate this massive tunnel that they could take and build an elevator shaft and take like trucks down there and stuff.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so when you can find something else to do with a drill, like where do you find something else you can do with a drilling rig?
Right. That's
You know, it's just not one of those things that you typically stumble upon, right?
Yeah, but again, going back to your previous point, if you've planned the 80%, when that 20% like that hits, you can pivot quickly and take care of it.
Yeah, you know, so over my career, you get to see all these different things. Like we look at drilling rigs and we just say oil, gas, and now it's just so much more. Like it's oil and gas. You can drill for lithium with these things, you know, as a solution mine lithium, geothermal. You know, now we're looking at the geothermal market for drilling, you know, to have drilling rigs, you know, explore that market. You know, we were looking at potash mines. We're looking at, you know, so it's really interesting when we're starting to see all of these other scenarios in which, you know, a drilling rig has an application. It's not just oil, not just gas.
That's going to be helpful too. I think if you can show a way to sort of diversify that risk to that piece of equipment, getting capital for it will be not easy, but it'll be a little easier because you can say, hey, if oil and gas is slow, we can do this over here with this and
Yeah.
that kind of thing. We can deploy it those types of ways. So, so you're at Nabors for 3 years. You sit down with the private equity guys just to have a conversation around, hey, future tense, what's going to happen, and then what?
Well, and then I walked away, and then they asked for, 20 days later, they asked for another coffee. They asked a few more questions, and
said,
still,
"Well, nothing's
still
changed."
naive farm kid, right? So I walk away again, and a couple weeks later, they asked for again. I'm like, okay, something's up. What are you guys looking for?
Yep.
And they said, look, we're looking to put this business plan together. We've got a business plan together. So it was kind of the reverse where, typically you have to take a business plan to private equity and then they have to buy in and believe it. Like we've got this business plan kind of cooked up and we're having a tough time putting a management team around it. And, what do you think? And I'm like, okay, well, I didn't think we were having that conversation, but
Right.
okay, that's interesting. What are you thinking? And, they were talking about telescopic doubles, as the rig piece. I said, good luck, I'm out. I just don't see it. That's a saturated market
Cool
in
story.
Canada. I'm sorry, I don't see that having legs. It's going to be commoditized, and it'll be a tough gig.
And then their next question obviously was, well, what would you want to do?
Yeah, and then that's where the big question came in and said, well, if you had a blank sheet of paper and you were to do this, what would that rig look like?
That's a scary question, because now,
Yeah,
whatever you say might happen, and then you better be right.
so yeah, this was so I articulated what my views would be on that, and I left Nabors that fall, winter of 2012, and in February 2013 we started Citadel, and that blank sheet of paper was something that really stuck in my head. And the first 3 months of the company, all we did was went around to all my old clients and all my colleagues in the business and said, okay, if you could change 5 things on a drilling rig, what would they be? And started getting this feedback and said, okay, of those 5 things, if you could only have 3, what would those 3 top things be? And if you could only have one of those things on that list, what would that be? And did 30, 40 interviews like this.
Sure.
Just exploring, because we knew how to build rigs, but if we were just going to go and build the same rig that we were building over and over again, we were going to end up
run
with
the same roadblocks that you'd run into.
we were going to have the same product that the
Sure.
big companies had, and they were just going to beat us with experience and size, right?
Correct.
So we knew we had to differentiate. And what we ended up with is what today's world calls a super spec rig. But this was back in 2013 when there was no names. So it was high horsepower pumps and, a top drive with a lot more horsepower and
So you're saying you
torque
coined
capacity.
the phrase super spec.
No, we didn't coin nothing. We just we just built a rig,
Right,
but we just
right.
built a rig. That term came out 2, 3, 4 years later. But we had stumbled upon this intentionally, kind of in a way, prior to a lot of companies, maybe looking at it from a more intentional piece. Like, again, this business seems to evolve out of need, and I call it the weak link theory, where every time a new piece of technology enters the drilling rig space, it creates a new weak link, and somebody has to react to it. So, historically, take drill pipe, for example, when it was no longer the weak link and they built a higher torque, higher spec connection drill pipe, we could drill further and pull harder. Well, now we had to take a look at the drawworks.
Right.
Now we can use a bigger drawworks. So now the industry upsized drawworks. Well, now we had to look at the derrick and the crown. Well, now that we were able to do that, well, we can go deeper. Now what? Well, now the racking capacity of the rig has to increase because we're going to rack more pipe. So that had to increase. Well, now we're going deeper. We need bigger pumps. So we just continually evolve around that weak link. Well, now we got everything good on the rig. Now the drill and mud motors need to change, or the bits need to change. And when downhole then catches up or passes, well, now we got a new series of weak links on surface. And you just continue. Now we need bigger generators. We need more power. So you keep chasing a weak link.
And eventually that weak link comes all the way back to the first one.
Absolutely it does.
And you start again.
And we're cyclical. Here we go, another cycle, right? So we looked at all of this equipment and say, okay, we need to overbuild in these spaces. And if we see something now, the next question is, 5 years from now, what do we see? Well, maybe we don't know what we see, but we know that we don't want the weak link to be here, here, or here first.
Yeah.
If anything, let's put the weak link on the power side and plan for it. So we built the rigs to have, a fourth bay ready so that we could plug in a fourth generator at some point. We knew that was coming, and this is back in 2013.
So you're building them from the jump to be able to expand if you have to.
Absolutely.
That's great.
And then the other side was, okay, we knew that, we're not going to be the company that's going to be super inventive, but we want to be very disruptive. So that means we have to be able to integrate, and integration's been a passion of mine forever, where you look around here at the oil show, and there's so many companies that are doing it right, and so many companies that are missing the mark, in my opinion, where you have this bolt-on concept going on. And when we buy a car, we don't bolt on air conditioning. We don't bolt on cruise control. We want it integrated. We want an integrated experience, a cockpit experience. And that was a real big philosophy of ours, that we centered everything around the driller's chair, and you had to be able to integrate into that chair with your technology. Nobody gets to keep adding on screens. Our doghouse is not going to be a Costco parking lot with a car alarm going off that nobody's paying attention to, because we just become desensitized.
Absolutely.
And we had to be very mindful of the saturation level of the drillers, just to make sure that, you know, they're taking on and being able to take on the right responsibilities at the right times and be able to acknowledge them. You know, so when we trip, we had the 4 screens, tripping screens came up. When we drill, drilling screens came up. You know,
Right.
the technology existed, right?
Right.
You know, and for us, when we were building the rigs, you know, again, that blank sheet of paper came in real handy, because we didn't have to comply with, okay, we got, you know, we're a big company, we got 100 of these, you know, these F-1600s. You got to use an F-1600.
Yeah.
We didn't have those handcuffs. You know, you got to use this generator. You got to use that top drive. You got to. So we got to go around the planet in places like this and say, okay, what's the best product that we could build into this? And that was such a great experience.
So I find it interesting that they, because listening to you describe it, you stepped away from Nabors, jumped into Citadel, and didn't know exactly what type of equipment you were going to build or run, and they allowed you the time to do the research, and that's interesting to me.
You know, I think they looked at it as, you know, we had the concept to them. Look, we're going to build rigs that are 2,000 horsepower. We see that already. We need to have this depth capacity. We know what the well profile is looking at. I know that formation is not getting deeper, it's getting longer. You know, whether you're in Canada or in Texas or in Saudi Arabia, you know, in Canada, the Montney is pretty much the same depth everywhere you go. Sprayberry in West Texas is the same depth everywhere you go. So you just have to go that far down. We're not going, you know, 8 miles
how do you
straight
get
down.
more lateral?
Yeah, we're thinking about lateral, right? So we know what the pull needs to be. Now we just need bigger racking capacity, and we were able to take a look at all those weak links and pre-plan. Okay, we're going to build a 25,000 foot rig.
So when did the first Citadel rig hit the ground and go?
1 year later, July of 2014.
And how many rigs you got now?
6, yeah. So we hit the ground running. We were building them on spec at the time, and we built out 6 rigs from 2013 to 2016. Then 2016 hits.
Which is a great time.
Yeah, another kick in the shin.
You're like, man, I've done this before.
Yeah, and you know, markets eroded, and we were able to maintain utilization. Rate was obviously compromised. And we had to really take a hard look at, okay, what are we doing here again? And, you know, looking around the world at that time, and it's like, okay, weather the storm, right? And again, you get frozen with fear and anxiety about how long is the storm? You know, and the more you read and the more you watch and the more conversations you have, the more fear that you discover. And, you know, it's like, oh man, this thing may not recover here, meaning Canada. And it hasn't. You know, really, most jurisdictions picked, you know, Canada last year had a pretty good year, but from 2016 till then, it hasn't been good for our industry. You know, we don't have any government support for the oil and gas industry, quite the opposite. It's
documentaries on the oil sands help out a lot too, by the way.
Well, and you know, I'll touch base on the oil sands in that they represent such a small portion of what Canada's energy business is, but yet, you know, we get these fly-in celebrities that come in, and, you know, really villainize the business. And it's, and I get it. Every business can perform much better and much more responsibly maybe than we currently are. But for Canada to get painted with that brush, like when you talk, and I've talked to a few people around here, oh, you're from Canada, you work in that oil stuff, that tar sand stuff, and that's here, that's in this business.
That's what everybody thinks, and it's unfortunate because, like you said, it is such a small portion of the energy business in Canada.
Oh, when you take a look at what Canada could provide from an energy perspective globally in LNG alone, we would be skipping the coal phase in Africa
everywhere,
and India and Pakistan, right? So, anyways, that's a different political podcast.
That's a different podcast. That's a whole nother thing.
Yeah. So yeah, we 2016 hits and we struggled along for about a year and a half into that, and
at this point you're full on married, kids,
yeah,
all that going on too. So the stresses, I would imagine at that point, are a little different than in 2009. You're now you've got to balance out, man, what am I doing? Is it right for the company, for me, but for also my family and extended from there?
I had great family support, and I guess that's a part of the Citadel story I have to tell too, because it's a big moment. I remember I'm sitting there with my wife, still at Nabors, and there's opportunities, here, and I look at her, like, what am I doing? Like, what am I going to do here? Like, good grief! I thought I had my, goals set here.
My plans. Right?
Yeah, this was it, right? And I don't know what to do. She looks at me. She goes, "Could you live with yourself if you said no and had to watch somebody else do it?"
What a great question.
Oh, it was just like gut shot, right? I'm like, wow, no, I can't. She goes, well, I guess you know what you have to do.
Man, that's
so
outstanding. That level of support is truly what it takes.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, it was, so I've had nothing but fantastic support, from my home world, and they're super proud and very supportive, and then they also take the brunt of everything when I'm not home, right? So, from the 2016 piece, we move into 2017 and a half, and we start looking at, hey man, we got to pivot. This isn't going to work here. We're gonna go broke if we keep doing this. And we start looking again at the planet as a whole. Like, we're okay. What else can we do with these drilling rigs, right? And the guy I worked with a long time ago just called me up out of the blue one day. He goes, "What are you guys doing?" I'm like, "Oh, we're working." He goes, "You got any of them rigs to come down to Texas?" I'm like, "Well, they're all working right now." And we were working, but like I said, our utilization was super. We were keeping guys busy. We did pay cuts, pay rollbacks across the entire company. Our messaging was simple. We care about your mortgage and your kids and your groceries. We don't care about your holiday trailers or your Harley Davidsons. And we care about everybody equally in that. So we're not laying off the roughnecks to keep the drillers working. We're keeping everybody busy. Now we're all in this, so this is our play. And I said, you go to the bank, they don't ask you how much you make an hour. They ask you how much you make a year.
It's true.
So you can focus on your hourly rate here, or you can focus on your annual wage. You will be okay. It's not ideal. Trust me, we all know this. We're all
Nobody wants to do that.
No, but that was our path. That was our chosen path, and worked really well for us. So anyways, we explore. This was a South Texas opportunity, actually, and we went and hopped in the trucks and took a look and came home. And the challenge to our team was, okay, we might do this. Now, if we do, that 80% prep thing, okay, so take every downtime event we've had in the last 4 years of our company's history. Now, every downtime event we've had, now think of a bunch more that we haven't had that we could have. And now put yourself in Saturday at 3 o'clock in the morning and you need 3 outs on how to fix it. So our ops team went to work on all of that.
And that level of planning, was that because of the geographical difference in where you're going to be operating?
Absolutely.
And your ability to service that need?
Yeah. What vendor are you going to use?
That's right.
Who's the exact? I want to know the exact welder you're going to call. 3 deep. You need 3 of them. So 2 of them aren't going to answer, or one of them's not going to answer. And we have to be able to have business, certainty. We have to be able to keep operational certainty in play.
So you're building a continuity plan.
Absolutely.
If we decide we're going to send this down to South Texas.
Yep. And went through the whole process and went and got board approval to do it, and then the oil company we were looking at became less than stable, and we abandoned the plan, and we're like, oh man, so now what? We say, what next? And we said, well, if we've done all that planning, for South Texas, let's do it for the Permian. And team went through the vendor list all over again. And okay, where are we going to go? What are we going to do? This is where we go back to Nick. One of those first people we met in West Texas. And okay, how are we going to get our pipe dealt with? Pipe inspectors. I'm sorry, but we're not just going to put the blind faith in Jim Bob, who's a 2-man show. We need a company that we can trust.
There are no shortage of people to inspect your pipe.
Yeah, you could get 3 different inspections done on the same pipe and have 3 different sets of results come back at you. So we wanted we wanted consistencies. We wanted vendors to have good credibility and wherewithal, and then we had to battle back on the other side of it, where we're just another company coming to West Texas, and those vendors have all been screwed over once in a while by people testing the waters and not getting paid, and things like that. So we had to have a cash and carry plan for a while. We're paying everything with a credit card immediately on delivery, which was fine. We understood that.
It's understandable, yeah.
And then built our credit history with everybody, but went through that entire process. And we greenlit that whole deal with the board, and then it was time to find the client. And I reached out. We had done work with Apache in Canada, and at that point, Apache pulled out of Canada as an oil company, right? So hey, writing was on the wall what everybody else needed to do. So Apache pulls out, and one of the drilling managers that we had worked with took a role on the completion side with the Alpine High group out of San Antonio, and he introduced us and gave us kind of a head nod to that group, saying, hey, we worked with this company up in Canada, fantastic. And we get exploring the conversations, and they're like, look, we're just in a catch and release pond, they called it here. We're letting a rig go, and we're just catching up on another rig that somebody else let go, and eventually we catch our own old rig back, and we're just not getting what we're wanting out of that.
Yeah, there's no consistency there. I mean, you're kind of at the mercy of whatever crew happens to be on that rig.
Yeah.
Again, coming back to the people, right?
Yeah, and he said we gotta fish in a bigger pond. So if we expand the geographic area that we're willing to bring a rig in from, what would that look like? And we ended up, they took 2 rigs, and once that first contract hit, and we had legitimacy with a company like Apache, the other 6 rigs were down, the other 4 rigs were down in a matter of months, and we had everything working down here. And it was fantastic. We've developed such great relationships with the vendors in West Texas. I can't say enough about all of them. There's companies like J&W and Bridges and Wildcat, and we can go down this list of vendors that they're just great companies. And 3 o'clock in the morning, they are not only answering the call, but they are working with us. Guys like Lightning Trucking, and I can't throw out enough names. that we just appreciate working with them so much, and it's not all good days, right? Typically
Sure.
when you're relying on vendors, you're in need.
You're in need, and you're also going to at times have less than desired outcomes, and it's again, if you have that relationship built, that's how you get through those days.
100%.
And I appreciate what you're saying about Wildcat, and we're a unique company, but that mentality is not unique to a lot of service providers out in West Texas. It's something that's such a core component of that community. Like I said, being born and raised out there, that's just what you're around, and similar to your comment about learning how to fix things, it's just it doesn't occur to you that there's another way to do things. You're open 24/7 and you're ready to go.
Yeah.
And so that's great that you've had that experience too.
I'll one quick Wildcat story. Like, we had some pipe get
Wildcat
get
stories
exposed.
are fine, not Nick stories. Nick stories need to stay private for sure.
We had some pipe get exposed, and we had a pipe failure. And in doing the failure analysis on it, we went to the team, and Carlos and Nick set us up with everybody in there, and it was a really, again, a cool learning experience. Again, I guess we say these unfortunate events enable us to learn about things that we never anticipated spending any time on at all, right? Like,
Absolutely.
I can say I know far too much about pipe failure than I ever wanted to know or thought I would know. We know far too much about certain other negative events that occurred that just had to get you driven into learning a whole new skill set.
Just the minutia of it, that you're like, man, this is so in the weeds, but if I don't get there, I'm not going to understand it.
Exactly.
So you have to.
Yeah. So we get everything rolling, and COVID hits.
Yeah. Well, before COVID hits, you guys decide you want to partner and with Opla, right? So around 2019, I think, is when they said that was founded, and that's what's the relationship between Citadel and Opla?
So we go back, to that 2019 period, and ARC Financial is always looking at deals all over the world, and that's our backing partner, private equity partner. And anyways, they're a Canadian-based private equity firm, largest energy capital provider in Canada, and if you have an energy play as an entrepreneur, you're probably going to go talk to those guys. And Elvin had talked to members there, and the deal for ARC wasn't big enough, for a private equity firm to step in the way ARC would. So they called us up and said, hey, would you guys look at this as a possible business strategy? And we're like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because we were always looking. We were saying, look, at right now, rigs don't make sense. The return on, and rigs still don't make sense from a return on investment. Nobody's building a new rig right now in North America. Now, China and Saudi, they're building new rigs nonstop, but in North America, there's not a rig build program.
Well, there's still so many pickled from the last time they had it. You just get it ready to go.
Well, yes and no. I would say that there's a demand for a more modern rig, but there's no business model to say that somebody's willing to pay for what that would cost.
Sure.
When you take a look at what it would cost to build a new rig today, the day rate would have to be $40,000 to $50,000 a day.
Yeah,
in order to justify
for the
capital outlay for it. So, and then we're not going to compete with 8 and 10 year payouts in a world where capital is global.
Yeah.
If I invest $1 in X, I should be able to get the same return as if I invested in Y, or I'm only going to invest it in X.
That's right.
And I think that's the big problem that oil and gas is facing right now on the drilling contractor side, is that they can get a better return simply by investing in the oil company side or a different business.
Yeah, or even in a different industry altogether.
Or a different industry.
Right.
But if we're not able to compete at the same level on ROI and shareholder return, we're just not going to have shareholders.
That's true. So they come to you, ARC comes to you and says, would this be something you'd be interested in? You guys had already been thinking, how can we diversify a bit?
Yeah, and they brought it to me because of my previous experience in MPD. I played, 7, 8 years in that game previously as well. So, it was a space I understood. It was, and I warned them. I said, look, it is going to take an awful lot for me to get excited about MPD. I'm just not there. I get it, but it's again, it's like a telly double. There's a lot of companies out there that provide RCDs. So how do you differentiate? It has to be something that can differentiate itself.
Yeah.
So I got talking with Elvin and a few meetings, and he had a great concept. There was a concept there that made a lot of sense. We took a look at it. We wanted to throttle the well differently, and our view at that point was, look, in order for this to get legs, it has to be a different company. It has to be able to provide a full, robust service line that can focus on performance drilling. So we need that new product you're talking about. That has to be, step one. Step two, you need engineering support, because most of these companies have to get third-party engineering or third-party, assistance, third-party software. You need your engineering and software internally. You have to develop it. And then we need remote operations,
Like true remote.
True remote operations. And, I'll hand it, they met all of those. We ended up, founding that company with them. Citadel's the majority shareholder there, the controlling partner. But
found that in 2019, and just in time to all celebrate COVID together.
Yeah, so the Opla team, Citadel Opla team, we had a lot on our plate at that point. We got operations going in West Texas. Our rig count only dropped to 50% for a short period of time in this, and we set up a COVID camp in our yard facility in Odessa. Again, we got a lot of expats working. We got Canadians that aren't sure if they can get back and forth across the border.
Sure.
And what does that look like?
And in that time, at any moment, the U.S. or Canada could shut the border and just say no
Absolutely.
one in or out.
Yeah, and we kept articulating to everybody. We said, look, we're gonna communicate with you very regularly, but we don't know what we don't know, and we're gonna tell you what we do know, and we're gonna tell you what we think, and you're gonna have to make decisions based on that. So everyone's free to make their own decisions, but we're going to put up a camp here, and those that want to stay can stay indefinitely until this thing passes or until we get more information. You're Canadian citizens, so you'll always be able to go home, but you might not be able to come back.
Right. Now,
huge sacrifices were made, let me tell you. People stayed in for 100 days straight.
Wow.
And, we built contingency plans on contingency plans. Like that's, for a couple of months, I remember that's all I did was, what if one guy gets sick on a rig? How do we clean the rig? Where do we put the guy? What if two guys? What if a crew? What if both crews? All these different scenarios we played out. We've got this base camp. This is all the healthy workers. Now, what if we had sick workers? So we had a second camp there. Where are we going to get medical assistance? And so we planned all of that out. We never had any of those emergencies, but we were ready. To the degree we could be ready. And again,
there's your 80-20, right? You got to get 80% of the way there.
Yeah.
To make sure that you can respond accordingly. Because if you don't, especially with something like that, if you don't, you just look like you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, and you know the situation's going to be dynamic.
Yeah.
Like it's going to be an ever-changing situation that's going to continue to develop and evolve hour over hour when you get into it. So we were really over-preparing as best we could in all those scenarios. And
so at the same time you're over-preparing, you're also really kind of in the middle of standing up Opla.
Yeah, we're in the middle of the R&D phase there for them to go through all their product renditions and, get everything rolling from them. And for them, it maybe bought them some time to become better prepared as a company rather than just racing to commercialization like
Sure.
most do. So they were maybe able to do a little bit more of, quality Q&A, quality testing and assurance, and making sure that they had the product that they felt they needed to have. So we took that product out and put it on one of our rigs with one of our clients as a test phase, and worked favorably. Found a few areas that we needed to clean up, and were able to send it back and clean that up, and come back to the field with field tests again, and made the decision to scale that company after that. So that's the model they're in now. I think we're going to end up with 40 units by the end of the year.
That's amazing.
And then for them to come to a place like this and pick up 2 of 16 awards given.
Yeah, and Elvin was saying yesterday that he did some research back as far as 50 years and could find no indication that another company had ever won 2 awards at the same event. So that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and that was my words to them too. It's super impressive because I can guarantee you they sure didn't want to give you 2. So both of these had to be at such a level.
Yeah, a unanimous, hands down, this is best in class. So it really speaks volumes, like I said, not only to the technology and to the equipment, but more to the people of that organization. And the same with Citadel. I mean, you guys, to be able to continually pivot and prepare and build contingencies and have people willing to stay in the States for over 100 days during crazy weird times. You only get that if people know that your intentions are pure and that you have a heart for them and their success. And that's a culture, and it has to be intentional.
Come back to culture now, right? Now it's not a social studies class anymore in grade school for us. Now it's a function of how we do our business. It's how we wake up in the morning. It's more important than any other metric in your business, because if it doesn't start there, I just don't see you having the longevity. And we take a look at how we hire people or how we select people. It has to be against our core values, and we have to stay true to that. Sometimes that's at the beginning, I guess maybe sometimes that's hard. Later on, it becomes real easy. It's just a real easy to yes, easy to no, and you waste no time on it. Hey, if performance is one of our core values, and it is at Citadel, we're going to lead with performance. And that has to be a piece. And we can't give ourselves, a crutch on not performing or an excuse. At that point, if we can, and obviously safety has to play a role in this, and we're not going to apply unneeded pressure and any of those scenarios. But yet, if F1 can race cars safely, and speed is the number one measure of success, we can do this in the oil business as well.
Yeah, and if you look at why they're able to do what they do at the speed and pace from the pit crews to everything, it's because it is a well-oiled machine. Everyone's on the same page. Everyone understands their role, their process, and if that guy on the front right tire fails more than about 2 times, he gets replaced by somebody. And it's not a question of we don't like you and you suck. It's a question of you're going to get somebody hurt, and you can't be allowed to hurt yourself or others or compromise the overall team's success because you're not quite where you need to be.
And again, I come back to a room like this at OTC, and it is filled with technology, and it is fantastic stuff. I'm a technology nut. I love it. I literally come here to look for the themes, what's coming, what's new. But then, I look at our company at Citadel. We just turned 10 years old. Our rigs aren't
Congratulations, man. That's awesome.
Thank you. But our rigs aren't brand new anymore. And this year's safety stand down topic was on that topic. Was these rigs aren't new anymore. They're 10 years old. So when they first came out, these were the Lamborghinis of the business. 0 miles on them, fresh paint. It is sexy, and the best people. We were able to pick the best people to come because we had this sexy product line. Right now, it's 10 years old, and there's some worn tires, and maintenance has to get done, and it's a little bit more of a project car than a race car. we have to really focus on our maintenance. We have to focus on maintaining our position in a super spec rig. We're adding generators. We're doing this work. We're doing recertifications. We're fixing bearings. We're in the regular business now. Now people matter more than anything. And good people really matter, because that's the face of your company. Those are the people that are going to they're going to make those repairs. They're going to do so in a manner, like our company had, like I think a 0.67 downtime rate last year.
That's outstanding.
And for 10 years straight, it's always been under 1% of downtime across the company. That's a reflection on people. That is a fantastic reflection. And, really proud to announce as of May 1, we've got a 0 TRIR across the company. So again, they're doing it safely. And that to me, coming from the roughneck position, is what's important. You've seen so many guys in over 30 years now. I know a lot of guys that have passed away in many different preventable measures and manners. Some work related, some not. But that philosophy that people matter most has to come into play. And when you dedicate your resources to your people in the company, it pays dividends beyond reinvestment of equipment by a major multiple.
Yeah, I don't think you could say it better than that. So what is the future, if you can disclose it, of Citadel, and where do you see maybe not the next 10 years? I mean, that's a long time to look. I mean, obviously when you're planning, you talk about short-term, mid-term, long-term. What do you see in the short-term and mid-term as your focus for taking Citadel where it is now to where it's going?
It's a great question. And again, I think just look at the markets in the last couple of weeks where, oil goes 85 to 73. OPEC makes a move. It goes to 82. We're trading below 70 this morning. Such choppy markets right now that really doesn't bode well to confidence, which makes capital scarce. So I think we're in a position where we're going to be continuing to look at conserving capital and being disciplined with how we make our moves. I still think the OPLA business is a growing business. We're going to continue to monitor and scale that business. I don't see a growth in drilling rigs just yet at this point. And again, if the majors don't see it, we don't see it for the same reasons, and probably, if anything, capital's a little harder for a small company to attract than a larger company to attract. We don't have liquidity as a private company compared to publics. Somebody can invest in a Precision or an H&P or a Nabors and get out of it in a day if they wanted to. For us, that's a longer term commitment. So we just have different challenges. I see us continuing to focus on our people and do really good work. What we're really focusing on right now is our digital image and where we're going with that from a integrated application approach for downhole technologies. We talked about Nabors just being over here. So we've worked with the Nabors Drilling Solutions group on actually integrating their downhole product lines. So we work with them. We've been able to integrate their rocket and their Revit and their downhole technologies for directional drilling and tracking off EDR. So again, it's no longer I don't see the business as your neighbors, we're Citadel, we hate you. That's not to me, that's not the competitive platform. I think again, it's really about the synergies on being able to leverage each business to the greatest degree that it possibly can be. For them, we were the first company that they really worked at, okay, can they integrate their products on somebody else's rig?
Mm-hmm.
So it was a really great project to work on with that as well. So we're focusing on that side of the business to a pretty high degree. Again, OPLA's software side, we're seeing a lot of software developments that are leveraging, the ability to increase performance while drilling. Taking a look at new technologies coming out in regards to our ESG and sustainability file is going to be important to us and the business, or you're not going to be able to attract capital for sure. So, we have to explore electrification, highline. And again, funny story, our rigs were all highline ready the day we built them. We could plug into a transformer off a highline and shut the generators off, and we've had that ability for 10 years.
And that was well ahead of its time then.
Yeah. Well, it's ahead of its time today.
Correct. But I'm just saying,
yeah,
especially 10 years ago,
yeah,
that took some real forethought. And so that's very impressive.
Yeah, it was good. We had high views on gas and gas production. All of the rigs are dual gas blending engines, so we can run every engine that's operating in the field is able to run off 70% gas, whether that be canned gas brought in or field gas right from a local source that the oil company provides to us. So pretty proud of the company in regards to our sustainability file from the get-go, but obviously a lot of work to do. Again, our industry needs to continue to improve its image globally in order to actually take a seat at the table. I look at this and say, okay, if the world can believe in electric cars and if the world can believe in hydrogen fuels, how is it that the world can't believe in the internal combustion making the same amount of headway?
Yeah.
How can we not believe that oil and gas can actually be produced in a carbon net zero environment? If we're saying we can pull hydrogen out and use that safely and optimally, and we're going to believe in technology, I just think we have to have a less political and less polarizing conversation about the ability for our industry to do the same, and it should have the same amount of support and belief in it. It's been one of the most robust, evolving, ever-changing businesses, and really to be able to provide the planet with affordable and reliable energy has to be an absolute pinnacle of our existence. We have to be able to pull people out of poverty to a greater degree ever, and we have to be able to do that with affordable energy.
Yeah, and the industry's such an easy target, and the people in the industry, at least the ones that I know, and I'm sure you can attest to this, we just keep our heads down and keep working, and we haven't done a great job of marketing all of the things that we do for the planet and for the communities that we touch. But I do think that all of us would do well to focus on changing that perception as much as possible.
Has to be a proactive approach. We have historically taken a reactive approach and tried to correct people that have talked negatively about the industry. And yeah, we have to perform better as well. But again, evolution, is an evolutionary step that we have to take. There's not a light switch right now that you flick on, and we have a power grid that is able to supply us power for all the electric cars.
Yeah.
You take a look at some of the the ideas of electrifying big rig trucks. You're talking 2 8,000-pound batteries with a draw, and if you have a fleet of 20 or 30 of them, you're talking about a 6-megawatt facility when the plant producing them uses 2 megawatts.
Yeah. It's there's a lot of questions that remain unanswered, and a lot of the move to make that change is emotional and not practical. And we've got to figure out a way to bridge those two, and we're not going to do that on this podcast, unfortunately.
No, for sure.
Yeah. So, man, this has been amazing. Spending a great amount of time talking with you. I'm glad that we met early enough that we could get through it and not be in a rushed conversation, because your story's amazing, and I truly appreciate you taking the time to sit with me and to share that. I mean, I know it's going to be impactful. It's impactful for me. I know others are going to find it the same. So thank you so much for being a part of this. I'm really grateful to get to meet you, and by extension get to meet the Opla guys, and I look forward to meeting back up with you in the future and learning how you've iterated, because I know you will, because that's in your DNA.
I appreciate it, Justin, and thanks for making the time to tell the story. So it was a great pleasure.
And we'll blame Nick for anything that any mishap that occurs after this.
He's like Teflon. Everything just slides off him, right?
Yeah, that's why you throw it at him. So anyway, thank you so much, and man, safe travels back to Canada, and enjoy the rest of the show.
Appreciate it. Thanks,
All right.
Justin.
Yeah, thank you.